Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to do a very simple beach painting. So I'm going to be using a 1-inch flat brush and a smallish round brush and then a medium flat brush. So something that's like square and not too big, not too small, something that's big and square, and then something that's smaller and round and pointy. So any of those combinations will work for this. Super simple. We're going to start with a pretty sky color, and I'm going to do kind of a soft yellow. So I'm going to take some yellow with just a touch of red. That's just going to make that yellow look a little warmer, and then some white to make it look a little softer. So again, it's mostly yellow. And if you pull a little bit of red and a little bit of white in there, it's going to make that color look a little less bright, a little bit warmer, and a softer. Okay, once you get the color that you like, you're going to go ahead and find like the top 1/3. So if I divide the canvas into 3 sections, top, middle, and bottom, I'm going to do the top 1/3 with this color. So go ahead and put that in there like this. I'm just going to put that in. And then again, I can add a little bit more white to my mix. See how I like can make its own little space over here by adding white to the yellow that's on my brush. It's a little easier. And then I can add that towards the center. Maybe I want some that looks a little more pinkish, so then use more red and less yellow. And then you can get some pink, more pinkish tones in there. Try to get a few different shades in there to make it look a little bit like a sunset color. It's really pretty. But I do want like yellow in there. And then as I get to the top, maybe I have a little bit more of a pink. You can do whatever you like with it too. You can really do any color you want for your sky. You want to try something different, that's totally fine. But I'm just going to leave it at that. And again, we're keeping it really simple, but notice how once I get the paint in there, you don't want to overblend it. Otherwise, your colors are all going to turn back into one color. I'm going to dip my finger in some white, and I'm going to go right towards the middle, kind of bottom of this area, and make a little circle for my sun. Super easy. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my watercolor. So I'm going to clean the brush. And what I can do is I can keep some of those yellow tones. It's not like you are abandoning them all the way, but I do want my water to look a little bit more blue-ish. So clean your brush just so that we can start from scratch. And then I'm going to go ahead and have some blue on the brush, with the blue, and a touch of yellow. Mostly blue though. Just a touch of yellow, and that's going to be our watercolor. We're going to do like a nice green blue, and then I'm going to take that down just like the middle 1/3. And then as I bring it down to the shore, I'll add a little more white to the brush. So I added a lot of that darker color up at the top, then I maybe kind of clean the brush off as I go down a bit. And then just make sure you add some white to the tip of your brush as you bring that down towards the bottom of the section with this blue-green color. So I'm just dipping the tip of the brush with the white and just putting it right in there without cleaning the brush. And again, just like we did with the sky, you don't have to overblend, and you can always go back and add more of the blue-green color and add some. Just with the edge of the brush, add some side swipe strokes to make it look a little bit unblended. You don't want it to be just a solid color, otherwise it doesn't look as interesting. Now from there, we're going to add the ground to the bottom. So what that's going to look like is maybe more of a sand color. So I'm going to clean the brush again. And we're going to actually go back into that sky color, but I'm using a lot more white. So we can just go right into that yellow with a little bit of red. I just have a little bit of leftover paint because I didn't clean my brush 100%, but that's okay. But I want like more of an orange, so I might bring a little more red in to that yellow mix, and then a lot of white. A lot of white. And then to make that look more brownish, you could even use just a touch of black or a touch of blue. I'm going to go with a touch of blue. Black will make it look darker too, but I encourage you to do what looks best to you. So adding a little more blue and red into that is going to bring the color into this more earthy or more like brownish type color rather than like the light peach type color. But it's everybody's gonna just sort of choose what shades they want to use. I'm just going for this like tan earthy color. And then this is gonna go into the bottom of the canvas here. I'm just gonna bring it right underneath my water line and pull it down. And then notice how I got some of those other colors in there. Again, I could just dip the brush in the white and make sure it's a little lighter through the middle. And we want it to look kind of textured, so that's okay if it does. Now we're gonna clean the brush and just leave it aside for a second. I'm gonna take the square brush, and what I can do is I can make that sun look a little brighter by adding a little more white to it. And I could use a little bit of white on that little square brush, add some sea foam in the water, which would just be these horizontal pulls of white. And notice I can go towards the top of like a darker line, and then that'll make it look like a little wave in the distance. So just go towards the top of that. And then I want a lot of white horizontal brush strokes towards the shoreline. This is just going to come down here, and you're just going to pull that right in between where the sand color meets the water. Because usually that's like the shore is where the water gets the most foamy and pulls up and crashes up on the shore. So you're going to see much of those little white lines pulling up through there, through that space. And just do what feels fun for you here. If you get too much of this, you could always go back and add more of the blue-green color to paint over the white. So don't feel stressed if you're like, oh, I don't like how that turned out. It doesn't really matter that much. It'll be okay. It'll be good. Now I'm going to clean the brush, and I'm going to keep going with the same brush, and I want to create some little patches of like grass area. And I'm going to use like a very dark brown type color. So I'm going to go ahead and take the red and yellow aside, about equal parts, and then add black to it. And this is going to give me a nice dark brown color. And this is what I want to work with for these little tufts of grass. I'm just going to make these little patches on either side, like so. I'm just sort of rubbing the brush from side to side. And maybe one down here, do like a similar spot. And you can take some of this dark shadow color and just add some texture, especially towards the bottom of the canvas. Do a lot of layering. You can even add a little more black to it, especially in those large sections we added right here, and really give it some dark color. These little shadow areas. And then what's also fun to do is adding maybe some blue. So see how I could get the brush clean, and I can add a little bit of blue to my brush. And then I can come in here and add some like little blue streaks under these, or just throughout the sand area. And it just gives it this sort of surreal look, but it pulls some of the colors from the water down below. And it has this effect of looking like shadowish, very shadowish. Now we're gonna add some grass coming up, and I'm gonna do more of a green with black. So blue and yellow is gonna make green. And just make sure you're cleaning your brush when you're ready to change your colors. And then I'm gonna add some black to that. And that's gonna give me a really dark green shade. So it should have still a green look to it, but it should be very dark. And then what I'm going to do is use this square brush still, and I'm going to make some long brush strokes coming out of those dark spaces that come straight up over the water and into the sky, like so. Notice how I'm just using the edge of the brush, and I usually like to use the back corner. And what I mean when I say back, I mean like the corner that's the opposite side of where I'm going. So if I'm going up, I'm using the corner that's closer to me of the brush. I'm dragging that corner. So my brush isn't like tilted forward toward where the line is going. It's actually tilted back, and my brush handle is going the opposite direction of the way that my line is going. And that allows me to put less pressure on it. So it helps me get a better handle on the amount of pressure that's being utilized, which is really helpful in making those nice thin lines. And then just keep mixing up some more of that green. Make sure you get the really dark green at first though, because you want it to stand out and have this shadow quality to it. And just add as much as you can, because it's going to be just flailing around. Some can be short, some can be a little more tilted or curved, some can be longer. It's plants here, so they're just going to do what they do. It's fun to paint nature because it helps us really look a little more closely at the world around us, and notice these things. Like if I'm painting this beach grass, how does it actually grow? Kind of grows a little bit. Some goes this way, some goes that way, some is long, some is short. So we're able to really look at it a little closer, so that when we're painting it, we can make it a little more true to nature. Because our tendency is to make it our way, but really we're looking at the way that nature and God intended it. It allows us to be a little more honed in on that. Sometimes that means we got to let go of the way we think it is in our mind and really look at how it actually is instead. And that can be a little bit of a challenge at first, but when you get the hang of it, it's actually kind of makes painting more fun, because you can let go a little bit more of the needs, the feeling that you have to control it. You can just let it be a little more natural, a little more crazy, a little more whatever, like a little bit less trying to micromanage every little brush stroke, which can tend to make the process a little more stressful for some. You might be able to relate to what I'm saying. If you can, like, leave a comment. You might find that you're not alone, and that's okay. It's part of the process, actually, of painting that I love, is being able to be more aware of our tendencies to, like, how does that come out in the way that we're expressing ourselves creatively here on canvas? And oh, it will come out. And then you'll notice, or at least I do, I notice when my painting is a little more fun and relaxed and, mindful, in the way where I'm just kind of letting it go a little more. It usually ends up turning out a little bit better in the long haul. And even if it doesn't, that's okay. At least I wasn't freaked out about it the whole time. So that's a win. And then you could add some little doodad type things to the end of it, little fluff. So a lot of times I'll just like use the edge of the brush here and just sort of scrape it along, whether it's just the corner, or you can kind of use the full width of the brush kind of splayed out. It's just a very gentle little movement where you don't have a ton of paint on there, and you're just barely letting it kind of fluff off here. So I just go a little here and there. Don't get too crazy. Again, make sure it's a nice dark shade. You want to really get that in there. It'll enhance the whole contrast of it. But you're just really letting it go and just little bits here at the end, and just choose the ones you want to add this to. It doesn't have to be every single piece of grass. You're just gonna do a few here. You don't want it to look all cluttered up. And just make sure you're breathing and relaxing and enjoying it. I didn't really have much of a plan today. I don't always have one. Sometimes I get the urge, like I want to paint this one specific thing, and then that's how it goes. But sometimes I'm just like, I know I need to paint because I always feel better after I do. And I just then usually tend to gravitate towards just some simple scene, type of place that would make me feel relaxed. Like this little beach scene seems kind of nice. So that's what we're doing here. And that's okay. You don't always have to have a plan. But this can go on for a bit until you feel like, yep, this is good. I have enough. And then what I typically tend to do is just make sure, you can even use pure black. Just make sure that it doesn't look too sparse down here. It should look pretty clustered up, like pretty dense. That way you feel like this little grass area is nice and full. You have these little tufts. And then we can do some highlighting. So we're going to clean that brush. And then I want you to give a shot with like your round brush, smallish kind of round brush. And you can grab a really small one. Some people use these really itty bitty kind of brushes, or you could use a larger round one. It's kind of up to you. I'll use a smaller one today just because my brush strokes are pretty small. And then I'm going to take some more yellow into my green mix. So you got mostly yellow with a little bit of blue. You can even add it into that dark green. Just add some more yellow into that dark green. It's okay if the black is in there. It's just going to mute your green a little bit. If you don't have any black, it's going to be this really bright lime green. And if you do have the black, it's going to be more of an army or olive green. So you can kind of choose which green you like, and then add a little bit of white to it too to make sure it's really popping. And then you can add a few little highlights onto some of the grass. It doesn't have to be every single brush stroke, but just imagine the sun is setting and the light is going to be hitting some of that grass. On the right side, it's going to be on the left of some of those little grass strokes. But they can just sort of layer over that general area. And then on the right side, it would be on the left side, or on the left side, your grass will get a highlight more on the right side. If your grass is that big where it really makes a difference. But again, I'm just adding a little bit of highlighting, not too much, just a bit. Especially if you feel like your brush strokes got kind of thick, the highlight will help make your brush strokes appear not so huge. So that's another way that it can work in your favor, using the highlights. But it just adds some more color in there. And I find that if you have at least 3 shades, that's kind of my minimum suggestion for beginners. Just shoot for that. It's not too hard. And that'll give you really good results, even if you don't have more than that. And you can do a little bit of highlighting down on these little bottom ones. We have a few here. You don't need to overdo it, but we want to add a little bit more highlight to the sun. So I'm going to do some yellow and white highlight. So I'm cleaning the brush and getting some yellow and white on there, and then I'm going to go right under the sun and just do a little side to side glimmer in the water, coming all the way from the sun down to the shore. And then you can do it with pure white as well. So maybe you have some where it's got a little yellow mixed in. But you could also just do pure white. You can even do pink. I'm going to do a little bit of pink. I really want you to play with the colors here for this little sun reflection. Just a side to side. And then again, that can brush down through the sand too. Your highlight doesn't have to stop in the water. A lot of times the light travels down. And then again, you can do some pink, white with a touch of red. And then we can go ahead and put some of that in there. And in the sand as well. And there we go. We have this like fun like highlight going all the way through here. Love it. You can even put some of that, maybe a little extra white in the sun if you want that to pop even more. You can add different colors down in the bottom. Like maybe you want to add, I want to add some purple in here. So I could take some blue and red. I'm just cleaning my brush between these colors that I'm experimenting with. And maybe we add some of that purple into our shadow area. Just throughout this space here. The purple can act like a really fun shadow color if we want a little more shadow to appear. And again, you can add some white to that to soften it. Really appear throughout this whole area down here. Little strokes. And if anything gets a little too wild or you're like, that color just really didn't vibe, that's totally fine. You can even add some purple highlights to the grass. I like to play with colors that you might not like. A lot of times people will go, yeah, grass is green, sand is brown, water is blue. But then if you throw a purple highlight on there, it kind of takes that common sense out of it a little bit. Like the colors get a little bit more surreal, but it can end up looking really cool because if you actually look closely at a lot of things in nature, there are shades of purple in the grass sometimes, or in the water or wherever, even though you typically wouldn't say water's purple or grass is purple. But if you look really closely, you'll get a hint of those colors in there sometimes. And that's what makes it really interesting to play with paint, because you can represent those things maybe a little bit more dramatically than you would just by looking at it in nature. So you can kind of put a little bit more of a focus on it or a spotlight on that. And it doesn't look wrong. It kind of looks cool, like has a surreal quality to it. I'm just gonna add some light blue in my highlight to tone down some of my bulkier highlights so it will still remain looking bright, but maybe it'll soften them into the water a little bit more. And I do want it to be pretty bright up at the top, right under where the sun is. But again, the lighter blue tones can kind of soften those highlights if they do get a little too crazy. So don't be afraid to pull that in and use it if you need to. You can even go back into like that blue, mostly blue with a little bit of yellow, that darker shade, and kind of carve in a bit here and there to make it look a little bit less if you need to. So there's always different fun things you can do. I like to try to keep these under 30 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and let it go. Let's add a couple birds in the sky and we're gonna call it done. So again, you've got those grass, little highlights, fun little funky colors. We'll finish off with some birds, and I'm just gonna use the small brush with just some pure black. And your birds can look like either a V or an M. So I'm gonna do one little V like that, and then I'm gonna do an M. So you have like kind of a V. I made the V have like a little bit of a curly Q ends, and then the M. And then any other, like maybe you want to add some more little black, like little additions to those little grass things or whatever kind of touch-ups you need to do. go ahead and get those in there. And then when you're ready, you're going to call it done. But this is such a simple little sunset, little grass, little whatever. You could just sit down and do it in 30 minutes. So there's never an excuse like 30 minutes, not that much time. I bet you spend that much time. I know I do. There's no judgment. Scrolling on social media, doing absolutely nothing gets done really. In some of those moments, but you could still, like, you could take aside, okay, maybe I won't do that today, and today instead I'm going to create something, and you're going to feel a lot better about what you did that day, or at least that's how I feel. So I love to share that, and I hope I inspired you, and I hope you share. Leave me a comment. Let me know what other fun things you want to learn how to paint, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.